Hello, future web devs. Welcome to this video. My name is Rob. I'm a coding instructor for FreeCodeCamp, and in this video, we're going to be going over FreeCodeCamp's lesson on building a checkout page. We're going to walk through all of the user stories and help get you going in the right direction. And what makes this video a little different, a little unique compared to other ones that just give you the answers, we're trying to talk about things. We're going to go over things. We're going to go over some documentation to help you grow and wonder, why are we doing the things that we're doing, instead of just looking at somebody complete that we're trying to get you to be more well-rounded. So if that's something that interests you, keep on watching. And the one thing that you can do to help out our channel is like the video. And if you want to go further, go ahead and comment. Both things are free, and we'd love to meet with you and connect with you. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into what we're going to be doing. Okay, so this is what we're going to be building out as we go through this little miniature checkout. You can see that obviously nothing is functional, but it's just to get us used to HTML flow, the skeleton outline of things. And I believe the focus on this is to help out those that are impaired or utilize screen readers to make it more accessible. And that would be the point of this lab. And like I said, something very basic that we'll go through, and we'll talk about a few things. And if you are looking for a specific user story, make sure you take a look at the description down below. Everything is going to be chaptered out. The way that I work these, if this is your first time watching, is every one of these labs that we do that have user stories, I'm going to just go through all the user stories, and I'll put timestamps on there. I'm not going to test them individually. However, you can, as we go through each one, you can hit the play and then the pause button, and then you can go ahead and do and run your test. But I've saved mine to the end, and then I'll have a chapter at the end that will fix anything that I may have missed along the way. Typically, they do go in order as far as the tests that they do. So you should start seeing the check marks fill up as they are being done. But we're not going to test anything until the end. All right. So let's go ahead and get started with user story number 1. Okay, so you can see that FreeCodeCamp does give us our index.html that we're working with right here. And anything that we want to visibly be shown on our little browser preview over here needs to be completed in the body. So that's one of the first things that you may want to go through and you notice, or even put a comment in there saying that, hey, this is where all of my stuff is going to go. But user story number 1 says we should have an H1 element in here. So I'm going to do an H1. I made sure it's in the body. And matter of fact, I am going to hit the tab button to just give myself some indentation. And then I'm going to close it off. I'm always telling students, hey, when we're first learning these things, let's go ahead and open and close a tag immediately if it has a closing pair. There's going to be some elements out there that we're going to get to here that are going to be void elements, meaning that they don't have this closing tag that you see me highlighting. Okay, so what goes inside the H1? Now, whenever we are given these gray squares here, FreeCodeCamp is expecting us to have this typed out verbatim. Typically, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and copy it and I'll paste it in there, knowing that I can type it, but sometimes I do get errors if I don't do the copy and paste method. So that is user story number 1. That should satisfy it. Let's go ahead and move on to the next user story. User story number 2, it tells us that we should have 2 section elements immediately after the H1. So let's go ahead and do that. So in the checkout that we see right here, we're just going to do 2 section elements, and that is going to be open and close. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste both of these. There we go. And that should satisfy number 2. And again, these are just semantic tags to help us organize our workflow. Okay. We're probably going to be putting a couple different things in here, maybe an image in the section 1, and maybe the form that we fill out for credit card payment will be in section 2. So again, just a way to organize your page, your thoughts when it comes to these semantic elements. User story number 3, it says you should have an H2 element with the text your cart, and this needs to be within the first section. So let's go ahead and come over here to the first section here. And I want to hit the enter key just to make things nice and readable. We're going to do an H2. Again, I'm closing it off immediately so I don't forget. And then I'm coming over here in between the tags, and this is where I'm going to start typing because that's what's going to be displayed on the page. And this needs to say your cart. All right. Perfect. That is satisfying user story number 3. User story number 4, it says we need to have an image of the item in the first section with the appropriate alternate text. And you can use this image if you would like. Yes, I would love to use that image for sure. And I'm definitely going to copy it to the clipboard and paste it in here. So right underneath the H2, I'm going to put an IMG. Now, again, I'm always telling you to do open and closing tags, but however, the image tag is self-closing or a void element, what is what they say. And so it doesn't need a closing tag aspect. And it does get two attributes on there. The first one is going to be the alt. And right now I'm going to set that to an empty string. And then it also gets an src. Now, at the bare minimum, it needs an src. I don't know what photo this is. I'm assuming it's a cube based upon the name of the file itself, but I'm going to go ahead and paste that in here and we can see it. So now for the alt, I can put in cube, okay? And if you want to be more descriptive, you definitely can, because when we go ahead and I'm going to force this to not show an image, notice that the alt shows up instead. It's basically saying, hey, I know that there was an error with the image, and this is what should be on there. This also helps those that are impaired that need screen readers, for example, and it will go ahead and read the alt to them. So anyways, that is what they are talking about for user story number 4. User story number 5, it says that we need to have an H2 element with the text of payment information within the second section. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this, and then I'm going to come down here to the second section. I'm going to hit the enter key, and it says that we need to have an H2 on here. Again, opening and closing, practicing the proper closure of the tag. And then I'm going to go ahead and paste in the payment information for that section, okay? So one of the things that I did want to point out on this, even though this perfectly satisfies step number 5 or user story number 5, is that, hey, by having these semantic tags, we can totally see that there's a separation of concerns here. We have the cart, which is above, and then we have the payment information, which is going to be down below. And if we ever need to move these or style it maybe to be side by side, this is a perfect way to split them up, which is into their various sections. All right, moving on to the next user story. For user story number 6, it says we should have a form element within the second section. All right, that one's going to be easy enough. I'm in the second section. I'm going to be after the H2, and this is where I'm going to start my form building. And I'm just going to do open and close for this step here, and that should satisfy user story number 6. User story number 7, it says that we need to have an input with the ID and the name of card name. And then we need to associate a label with it as well. And this might be the tricky part that we might be stumbling on. Just that's a good sentence, but how do we translate that sentence into code and what it's wanting? And so again, it's just going to come from practice and taking a look at maybe W3 schools to maybe get an idea of what they are talking about when it comes to this. But usually when we have a form, we're going to pair up a label with an input field in this example here. So let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put in a label, and then I'm going to close it off, okay? I'm going to get one of these working right, and then I'm going to copy and then refactor the code. So the first thing that we want to do here is this is going to be for the cardholder's name. So I'm just going to do holder name. You can see that our label is showing up right here under the payment, which is great. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add my input field. And so I'm going to do input, and this is a void element, meaning that it doesn't get any kind of closing tags. But I'm going to do type is going to be text. And then it says that the ID, we need to set this to card name. And then it also wants us to set the name attribute to card name also. Okay. Now, how do we link the label to the input field? We got to use that magic attribute on here called for. And that's what creates this binding effect of a label and an input field. Because right now it's like a label that's just sitting out there. And you can either wrap the label around the input so it knows that it is associated with it, or we can use the keyword of for that attribute. And then it has to match the ID that we gave it down here. Okay. The name attribute, that's for your database. That's for your database to handle when we submit the form. So Those are the things that I want to make sure that are matched up here. This would be the formula for setting up the first one to make it pass the test. We are complete with user story number 7. User story number 8, it says that we should have an input with the ID and the name and the card number and a label to be associated with it. All right, perfect. We just got done doing one for the input field for card name. So like I said, you're going to take a look at a code base and you're going to be like, this code kind of works. Let me go ahead and use it and refactor it to meet my needs. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it, and then I'm going to go ahead and paste it here. All right, let me go ahead and separate this with a little space. So I don't want this to be card name. I want this to be card number. And instead of card holder name, I'm going to do card number, and I'll delete the name portion. This ID needs to match in order for the labels to work. So we're going to go ahead and put card number. And the same thing for the name. It needs to be changed as well in order to pass the test. So we'll do card number. All right. And that should complete user story number 8. So hopefully we see the pattern here that the 4 has to be matched up with the ID in order for it to be linked. Now we can test this out, and let me go ahead and do that for us. All right, I had to move my photo here, a little circle. And so we can do this visually and a click in order to see this. If I click on cardholder name, notice it goes to the corresponding input field. It didn't jump down here to the card number one, right? And so I can click on the card number one and it goes down to the card number input field. And that's how we can tell that these are really binded or bound or associated with each other. Okay, so that should satisfy user story number 8. All right, user story number 9, we have 2 input elements already. So it says at least 2 of your input elements should be required and have the area required attribute set to true. So that part is 2-step. You may thought it was only 1, but for our input fields, again, I'm just going through this to check the boxes. Obviously, we didn't do the rest of the stuff, which is let's do an expiration date. Let's do the CVV on the back. Let's add a button. None of those instructions are on here for this. You can definitely add them if you want. But again, we're just trying to check the box here for these tests on this. And what it's looking for is on the input field itself. We need to go ahead and put the keyword required on them. And again, this needs to go on the inside. It is an attribute. And then this area required, okay, we need to set that to true. And I did have, let me go ahead and pull it up here because I do want to bring this to your attention, is that the area required attribute indicates that the user input is required on the element before the form is submitted. Now, the thing that we need to also think about is that this is typically just for the impaired. It has no effect whatsoever as far as the element itself rejecting an input, because that keyword required that we just put on there is what is considered the form control, while this is just for the impaired or the screen readers type of things. Okay. So I did want to make sure that you're aware of it. Now let's go back to the code here. So I put that keyword required. I need to put required up here also. Again, the order doesn't matter. We could have put it at the beginning or we can put it here at the end. And then we need that attribute here and of the area required. And we're going to go ahead and set that to true. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing down here and set that to true. Okay. Now, that should fix or satisfy user story number 9. And now it's time to run all the tests to see how well we did. All right, final test. Let's go ahead and try it out. We're going to go ahead and run these tests here. And there we go. We got the confetti. Now, before we go, I know this looks nothing like what they gave us. And sometimes I do get questions on, hey, how do I get them to stack on top of each other as far as the input fields, just like we saw here. What they ended up doing on theirs is they wrapped a div around each one of the label inputs. So if I did that, now this becomes a block element, and you can see that it did the block on this one, and then we would need to do the exact same thing on the next one because you have the cardholder name, you got the card number, you got the expiration date, and the CVV. and the submit button. And so that is why it looks a little bit different than how they had it. Because if I were to slap another label on here, notice that it just gets shoved over here. So each one of them needs to have their own individual div in order to get that to look similar to what they had. Okay, so anyways, I really hope that you enjoyed this lesson. Hope that it got you over the hill here with the bumps in the roads that you may have experienced through this. The accessibility, it is a real thing. You need to think about it as a developer when you're making these web pages, and there's countries out there that make it mandatory for you to have it. And that's why a lot of people, they end up liking things like Bootstrap or Materially, because all of that stuff comes native out of the box for the impaired. And so you really don't have to think about it as much until you actually have a client that needs it. So anyways, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And again, thank you for liking this video. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.